Okay, here we go. Week 2 of the Keeneland Fall Meet. This first race on Wednesday was a chalky one from the start, just handicapping it. And that's how it played out on the track, too. Now, the 5 was going to be our early runner, but ended up being scratched. So we needed to pivot and see who could lead and win the race. And the 1 was a logical choice. The race 2 back is what does it. 47 and 3/5 seconds to the first call, 112 and 4/5 to the second call. Was in second by half a length of each call. That was against $35,000 claimers coming in today on a $20,000 claim race. So a big drop, very logical horse. And when you get through here, the other 2 choices are going to be very obvious as to who can run to that. And the first one of them is the 2. We see 2 races back, sat up in second, made a big move into the beaten lengths, and then went on to win the race by just less than a length. That was against a 113 and 1/5 second call, so not as quick, but a horse that we know wants to win running forward. And you see that also in the maiden claiming race down here, was right up on the pace the whole way through. The fractions just aren't fast. I had the 2 in there as another A horse because they're the only 2 runners in here that want to be forward to win this race. The 3 was a pretty quick toss, comes in with not a whole lot of form, but you see wants to sit pretty deep in here, and even when up on the pace, you see 3 back, faded late. Fractions very slow in there, and you see the last good race that she even threatened to win was 10 back, and that was against a 115. Easy toss in here for that reason. The 4, you can see 2 races back, 111 to the second call. That was on the turf at Belterra, and any Belterra horse, you're probably looking to toss here at Keeneland, and especially considering our favorite in here, the 1, coming with that win from Saratoga, much higher class level. The 4 was a toss on the fact that that win also, look at 12-5 non-winners of 2, jumped up to $20,000 last time out. Hawthorne on the turf, not good whatsoever. And we can go all the way down here April 27th at Keeneland. 6 furlong sprint against $20,000 claimers, nowhere to be found. I wanted nothing to do with her in here. The 6 was the B horse for me, and the logic was looking at the last line. Yes, $10,000 claiming race, but look at where she sat. Third, made a move positionally first the second call, and drew off to win the race. You look at the second call and just a 5th off from what we're projecting in here. But again, we know we have 3 horses in here that want to run 1, 2, 3. That's how I saw this race, and that's why I included all 3 of them. And that's how the betting reflected it as well. The 7 quick toss comes in with no form. I don't quite know why you would have any money on this horse. Went off at 53-1, but a toss for me. And then the 8 took a little bit of money. 11-1 is what she ended up going off at, so right around that morning line. But again, Belterra coming in against lower class level runners, and you can see the race 2 back even at Ellis was 4th out of 5 runners, off by 11 lengths, and faded the whole way through here. Those are sprints, obviously. I don't see the stretch out helping her at all. And the way this race was handicapped, the 1 ended up going off as the 3-5 favorite. The 2 was 5-2. Nothing you can do in here betting wise. The 1 wins the race. It's going to happen at times. Hard to do much with that betting wise for me though. Second race is one where in hindsight I really kicked myself, and let me first start by saying is that we did have 4 first-time starters in here. The 8, 10, 11, and 12 were all first-time starters, but the pace scenario was a pretty easy one to toss all but 2 horses as main contenders, really. And looking back at it, I should have went with a regular bet unit, I think, on this race, even with the chaos we could have with the first-time starters. And the reason why is because the 9 should get the early lead in here. And last race on the turf at Saratoga, 21 and 1/5 seconds to the first call, 45 and 3/5 to the second call, was up on that pace before fading late. I want to take that 45 and 3/5 seconds as the second call mark to look at the rest of the runners in here. And you're going to see pretty quickly that they just can't run to it. We see the 1, 46 and 2/5, nowhere to be found in there whatsoever, was a toss. The 2 we're going to touch on last because he was the lone A horse in here. But the 3, we see 47 and 2/5 seconds, only good enough for second in there, off by 5 lengths. He was a toss for me. The 4, you can see very slow second call times, has never truly threatened to win a race. He's just passing tired horses, I would think, with being off from the leader's winning margin that far in those races. So he was a toss. The 5 has no form whatsoever. I want nothing to do with him. The 6, same sort of thing. Not a whole lot of form in here. And I don't think the cutback from the mile to 7 furlongs is going to benefit him whatsoever in here. The 7 was a toss, and you can see the 2 7 furlong races in here against slower second calls. Hasn't been able to do anything whatsoever. I included this 8 as a B horse, and the only reason why was because of the maiden special weight record here. 19% win rate with a positive ROI. I felt if you're looking horizontal bets, this is a horse where the track record's there. The trainer knows how to win with these horses. So I was more than willing, if you wanted to, include him as a B horse at the most, because the 2 and 9 have ran before. But that's why I included him in here as a B horse. Now, the 2, I want to look at the race last time out, and I get it's at Churchill Downs, but 21 4/5 seconds to the first call, 45 3/5 to the second call. Yes, that's a -1 to the second call when you look at it adjusted, but you see the positional move from third to second, almost gains a length, leads in the stretch before being nosed down in there late. That was the fastest pace of last race, and it was a great middle move. I thought, even with that inside draw, not on the rail, but inside, could hurt, but I was fine with it because the rest of these runners haven't shown a whole lot. Went off as the 2-1 favorite in here, which is pretty evident when you look at that 4-1 morning line. There was no chance you were going to get that. What made me want to bet the race, though, was because of the 9. The 9 went off at 6-1. I don't think he should be even remotely close to 6-1. He's the only true front runner in this race, and anyone that's going to beat the 2 or 9 are going to have to run from off of it. Maiden races are won on the front end on the dirt. So that's why I was fine with wagering on this race. Now again, lighter than a normal unit size, but it was because there's so many unknowns in here with the first time starters. The other reason, this 11, I don't quite get it, but went off at 7-2. I understand you see the damn stats over here. 9 starters with 6 winners, 1 stakes winner, only a 33% clip with 2-year-olds. So really that could have been something you look to exploit. Like, you're tossing 22% of the pool. That's why I wanted to bet this race, because at 7-2 I felt that was severe underlay and thought it kind of juiced up the price in here on the 9, who does end up going on to win the race. And funny enough, the 11 comes in second in here. But again, kind of wish I went in a little bit harder with a full unit play in here, because the 9 stole this race on the front end and didn't really make it that much of a race, if you ask me. I didn't see this third race getting bet the way it did, and the reason why is because the 4 went off as the 3-5 favorite. Now, I didn't see that happening at all. For sure, I felt was the best in here, but not 3-5. So now, looking at the early running in here, we see that the 10 should be our early pace setter. But more importantly, I want to look at the second call times in here, because 45 seconds is what we should be looking at for the mark for everyone to run to. And there's so many horses in here that are just 1 or 2 fifths off that second call time. The winner ended up being the 2, and I didn't include the 2 whatsoever in here, even though you can see last time out, won against a 45 1/5 second call time in here. The issue that I had was that race last time out was a career tops 96 speed figure. I also took into account the inside post draw to where she needs to get out forward some to win these races, and it's a full field of 12. She's going to get slammed down on it, and I get last race I gave a little bit more leeway on that inside draw, and I probably shouldn't have. And in here, I probably should have flipped my thinking, because the 2 ends up winning the race at 3-1. The other deterrent I had is when you look at the odds of his last 3 races. He's odds on in those races. He's supposed to win, And today is a tougher spot. Either way, I still don't think this 4 should be taking 63% of the action. I had the 4 on top with the 7, which when you look at the 7, you can see 45 and 1/5 last time out at Churchill Downs. That was a -5 and just kind of staggers up to finish second. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have had this 7 in there as an A horse. The 7 went off at 10 to 1, so took a little bit of action off the 12 to 1 morning line. But when you look through it again in here, not coming in with good races from good tracks, lower level tracks. And since he jumped up to Oakland and Churchill twice, we see hasn't been able to win. Even his best race in here was 2 back at Churchill against $25,000 claimers. Again, slow pace. That's what closers are supposed to do in here. So from a handicapping perspective, I probably really fumbled this race. But again, with a 3 to 5 favorite in here, I'm not going to make a bet when a horse that I like and who I feel is the most likely winner is 3 to 5. So it ended up being a pass race. But what more importantly I want to talk about is this 2 that won the race was 2 to 1. I know there's always gripes, but the majority of major tracks, I tend to agree when we see a morning line runner 2 to 1 or under. And more times than not, I think it's usually a serious tip that this horse is a legitimate player in this spot today. I just saw too many negatives in this 2 to want to put any money onto this race. Even with him taking 25% of the pool, I can't bet on a horse that's 3 to 5, so I ended up passing the race. If you were able to take advantage of that 3 to 1, awesome, because you had one horse taking 63% of the pool and ended up giving you an overlay in this race. The 4th race was a pass race for me. I ended up going pretty wide in here, and the reason why was because we had the 3 who was a first-time starter, the 5's a first-time starter, the 7's a first-time starter, and then when you go through here even more, you see the 1 technically first time going around 2 turns. The 6 is going around 2 turns for the first time. This 8 is going around 2 turns for the first time. And then the 14, who drew in, is also going around 2 turns for the first time. Chaos race if I've ever seen it. I went 6 deep in here and still wasn't deep enough. And what's funny is that speed kills in maiden races, and that's what the 3 ended up doing. Went out to the front and stole the race. And when you look at who the early runner is from a matchup perspective, it's really the 12, the only one that wants to get out front. And that was against a very, very slow first and second call time before fading in here to finish 3rd. This was a race that was primed for someone else to bolt out and try to win it gate to wire. And that's what the 3 did in here, but took no money out of my pocket whatsoever. We had a 2-year-old race last week that was loaded with speed, and I ended up targeting all the off-the-pace runners. And I tried to dip into that well again since we have 6 horses that need to get to the lead to win. And that's the 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and the 10. I had the 2 best pressers in here as A horses, and the 2 went off at 3 to 1, and then the 7 ended up going off at 8 to 1. They were the 2 best pressers in here to me. I had the 8 in here as a C horse who went off at 5 to 1, but that was more of a precautionary, if you're playing horizontally, I think you would want to include the other off-the-pace runner with the way I was handicapping this race. Because when you look at the first call times, you can see the 5, 6, and 9 all can get there in 22 and 1/5 seconds. Then, when you look at the 3 and 8, they can get there just slightly off that mark. And then also, the 10 is going to be in that range as well. So I thought we are going to have a major scramble up there early, and it obviously didn't happen. What I ended up doing actually is betting this race. I took the 2 and 7, who I felt were worthy of a 2-horse Dutch bet. In hindsight, I really shouldn't have done it. I mean, again, these are 2-year-olds. Anything's bound to happen. In all reality, I probably should have demanded more of a price on the 2. And the reason why is because when you look 2 races back, 22 and 2/5 seconds to the first call, and she was in first. She did end up getting, ran down, lost by almost 2 lengths. Again, should I have added her into the early mix a little bit more? Probably so. I think more importantly, when you look at the pressers, they're coming in from lesser quality of tracks. So, in all reality, that should have been even more of a tip off that maybe the pressers weren't the way to go in here. But I wasn't going to let that derail of how I saw the pace coming. Ended up being a bad bet in the end because if 5 ends up wiring this field at 2-1 and looked to be a legitimate favorite in the end. The 6th race ended up being another chalky race, but I sort of let where the wheel pays were going kind of guide me to this bet, as well as how I handicapped the race. So to start with, the 3 ends up going off at 5-2. And I think that was a little bit too low for me as far as win betting. And the reason why is because when you look 2 races back at Woodbine, yes, a 6.5 furlong sprint, just crawling fractions in here and still not able to win the race. And then last time out at Kentucky Downs, not the best of post positions in here. Obviously, we've talked about that before with the sprinting. The middle of the track was not the place you wanted to be, but sat well off of it before trying to run up in here late. I felt that she was a contender in here today, but not that 5-2 price. When going through here to look at who will be our early pace setter, I used the 6's last line of 113 to the second call. She was in second, off by a head. Takes this race gate to wire. That was the mark I was looking for. Now, the next part of this is that the 7 and the 12 are also going to be early runners. So, in our mind, handicapping this way, we have to think that there's going to be 3 horses out front looking to take the lead in this race. When we get back up here to the 3, I'm going to go down to the maiden win here at Keeneland. I understand 112 and 4/5 is the second call, but positionally, look at where she was in that win. And she was in third. We're already saying there's going to be 3 horses up there. Can she come from deeper than where she was in that maiden race and win? Well, when we look through here, the answer is no. She was in 7th last time out and couldn't win. And then 3 back, she was in 5th and couldn't win that race either. So that's where I felt that that horse was seriously being overbet at 5-2. Now, the other A horse in here is the 5. She ended up going off as the 3-2 favorite. And I already said that the will pays were pointing towards her, and clearly the win betting in here was as well. Last race, you almost have to draw a line through. You can see on the right, broke in, bumped, rated 5 wide through the upper stretch and weakened. Made a good positional move, first to second call in here, against a 112 second call. So a full second quicker than what we're projecting to see in here today. The slower fractions should move her up, and that was the thought process in here. I didn't see the 5-1 coming down to 3-2, but that's why I had her in here as an A horse. So now, clearly the public's seeing what, is very obvious on paper. What made me want to dive into the race was the 4. And I want to start by saying the 4 went off at 29-1. I don't quite get why. I understand the 4 doesn't win this race, but why is the 4 29-1? 2 races back, 112 to the second call, makes a move from 5th to 3rd, loses the race by less than a length, but did lead in the stretch. That was a mile and an eighth. We're only going a mile in here today. So the cutback is going to help her. We see the second call time that she almost won against is a second quicker than what we're projecting. To me, it came down to who is more value between the 3 and the 4. And it's obviously the 4 is just 29-1. So what I ended up doing was Dutch betting the 5 and the 4 in here, eliminate the 3 altogether at 5-2, use that 29% of the pool to my advantage. 5 ends up winning the race and allowed a positive wager in this spot for me. The seventh race was a false favorite if I've ever seen one, and I want to start with the favorite, the 5. Ends up going off at 5-2. When you dive into here, I don't quite see at all where this horse should be favored. Let's go to the maiden win. $30,000 maiden claiming win. Finished second. Only won the race because he was placed first through a disqualification. Now, he does come back last time out and win a $30,000 claiming race and wins by 9 1/4 lengths. Both are sprinting, and they're both against pretty slow fractions in here. Today's a route. Look at the 2 route races now. We can see finish 5th and finish 4th. Has shown absolutely nothing in both of these route races. He's going off as a 5-2 favorite. That's giving everyone else in here significant overlay in odds. And these are the races you have to get involved in as a bettor. The best opportunity are races where the favorite is false and the second choice is 5-2 or higher. So when we look through here from a pace perspective, what I ended up doing is having the 2 as my early horse. And I used the last line, 47 2/5 seconds, 113 3/5 as the mark. I understand the first call, he was in second by a length, but the second call, he was in first and ended up winning that race. So 113 3/5 is going to be the mark. I didn't want to use the mile race from Ellis at 111 1/5. I felt, that's against maiden claimers. It's the, funky, whatever you want to call it, 1.5 turn mile distance down there at Ellis out of the first turn. So what I did again was use the 2-turn race. So 111 3/5 was going to be the mark in here. The 6 is who I had as an A horse, and I felt getting back to the dirt would be the right move. But he's been a little bit shaky in the past on the dirt, as you see, once we get past these first 3 races. In hindsight, maybe I should have downgraded him for that. But what I liked seeing were competitive races against sub 112 second call times. I felt it would help him getting back to the dirt, and it should propel him forward into a spot to where he could win today. And even more reason so, when I get that out of the way, you can see last race out at Kentucky Downs was against Allowance Company. He runs a good race in here, finishes 3rd. So I was fine with it. Again, maybe I should have downgraded. I don't know. I felt the 8-1 was, more than enough to look to bet him. Ended up going off at 6-1. And then the 8 was, if you want to say, a true top pick. This was a horse I really did want to wager on in here. When you look last time out at Churchill, he was in the 7 hole, so he already has a poor outside draw. The only win, though, comes on turf, and it was a $16,000 maiden claiming race at Ellis. Should I have been skeptical with him in this spot? Maybe so. I didn't use it against him because you see his race after that. He wins the allowance level race at Ellis, and even that last race against allowance level horses, he finishes 2nd. So we know that he's competitive against this level of runners, even though the second call times of both those races are absolutely slow, a -9 and a -10. Straight up, I think these are just terrible A horses looking back on it. But the winner, who ended up being the 1, went off at 5-1, was 10-1 on the morning line. It would have been hard for me to put him as an A horse. The last 2 races are kind of a step back, I think, from the claiming $75,000 win in here from Ellis. And you see, when we're talking about the Ellis Park race, 110 4/5 is the second call. That was a +9. He was up on that pace the whole way through here before drawing off to win. And even when we want to compare it to the 2's mile race at Ellis, we can see 46 2/5, so 2/5 slower at the first call, but the second call is 2/5 quicker in his win. So you can see that this 2 is going to be a marker early for the 1 to run into. I think at most you could excuse this second race in here for the 1. Maybe it was too high of a class level, But last race was good enough with the positional move, even though it was small. He cut into a position and beaten lengths before losing by 4 lengths in the end. I thought it got him back on track, for this race, and clearly it did. He ended up winning the race, but not too crazy to where I would have wanted to include him as an A horse. And then the other B horse I had in here was the 3. Bit of the outside looking in, but I wanted to get aggressive and include him as a B since I was so against this favorite. He's a closer that needs to have some pace up front. 2 back was a career best race for him at Ellis Park, going a mile, 111 and 4/5 the second call. Huge positional move in here, first to second call, and holds on late to win that race. The issue is that when you see he gets to these allowance races, he's not winning. And I think you have to give the excuse last time out. You're saying he's stepping back up in the class. But when you look at where he's coming into today, he's in allowance level company. He hasn't proven that he can win against those horses. I understand the win came back at Churchill against $30,000 maiden claimers, but he's won against $50,000 claiming horses. So that's why I thought, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. He went off at 15-1, so you got a little bit more of a price off of the morning line. I just think for me in this spot, when you're so against a favorite and want to toss him, and especially at 5-2, I think those are kind of where you need to push your chips to, even if you think he is a marginal contender, really go in on him in this spot. But regardless, I don't see me betting this one to win no matter what. I had the 8 and the 6 in here on win bets. Bad beat, especially when you consider that you had this one on your radar. The only way, if you're looking to play the odds, I'd have to completely flip my A and B horses to me to even make a wager on the one. Even if I go with the highest odds horses in here, the one's not included on that list. So again, handicap the race right, bet it terribly. That's really what it comes down to. And then lastly, this 8th race, we had 2 first-time starters, 7 horses going 2 turns for the first time. Definition of a chaos race. I saw it, though, as a race where I felt that the pressers could get a setup in here from the 6. You see last time out, 49 1/5, 114 and 1/5 to the second call, was up on that pace, just ran second the whole way in there. -1 and -5, so not a terribly quick pace. Clearly, anyone that plays would see, 114 and 1/5 isn't all that hot. What I did was target the 8 as my A horse. That last race I've actually really loved. You see the positional move from 8th all the way up to second to lose by just under 2 lengths in there. I thought the stretch out was perfect. And then the 10, same sort of thing. Up near the pace, made a positional move, and then just runs third in here. Beats 9 other horses in there in a full field at Kentucky Downs. Again, thought the stretch out would be perfect for her. The C horses I had in here were first time starters. The 2 and the 5. Look, I didn't have any wagers in here. The 6 ended up actually winning this race. Funny enough, gate to wire at 5-2. I didn't think that pace would hold up in here today, but clearly it did. I wanted to go daily doubles from the 7th race into here, but would have been so wide in both legs, I just didn't see it being a viable option in that 7th race, and good thing so, because the 6 ended up winning this race. So pretty slow day of racing from a betting perspective, but those are the ones that you really have to battle through on days like this, because I think there was plenty of spots in here where I could have forced wagers and I didn't. And I think at the end of the day, really end of the year, you're going to thank yourself because it doesn't dent your bankroll too much. But that's how this Wednesday card kicked off the second week for us.